Thank you. My name is Thomas. I work for mod.io. We do multi-platform UGC. So if you have a game distributing to multiple platforms and you want to extend the life cycle of your game through mods and user-generated content, please come talk to us. But outside of that, this AMA is for Tony, hosted by Sam, who's quite the polyglot and a VP at HelpShift. Tony's expertise is in player experience, and he has worked for quite a number of companies that I think nobody has ever heard of, such as Oracle, Riot, Epic, and currently is at Supercell. So I'll pass over to them.
So, excuse me if I don't sit down. I can't. The chairs are too long for me, for my short legs. So I'll walk around if you don't mind.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Welcome to our AMA session with Tony Adams from Supercell. Thinking less strategically about PX. It almost sounds like a sequel to Tony Wong's earlier session, thinking more strategically about PX. But I know their perspectives are very similar, and I'm very excited for Tony to be here with us today. Tony, why don't you start by introducing yourself a little bit more and talking about your role at Supercell? Anything else you want to tell the audience before we get started?
Cool. So at Supercell, I'm the tools guy for PX. It's called Product Manager, but I'll clarify that later. Before that, I've been there about a year and a half. Before that, I was at Epic. For 3.5 years, I was the Director of Support, where we worked together with Tony and Irina right here. Before that, I was in a startup in London, construction tech. We sold probes that you put inside of concrete, and it tells you the compressive strength in real time. I can see how everybody's getting passionate, and you want to know more about that. Please send questions. Before that, I was at Riot Games for 3 years as a manager in LATAM. I lived in Chile for 30 years or so habla español. Before that, I was at Oracle for 8 years. In between, I've done consulting work, business process consulting, which is by many considered the enemy. I can only confirm it is. So before Oracle, I was in HR consulting for 6 years. HR consulting, that is the enemy. Before that, I was in healthcare. Not the enemy. And before that, I was a programmer. We weren't called coders in those days, so early 90s. I think there's nobody alive that codes in those languages anymore, so that's my history.
Thanks, Tony. I think you can see that Tony's kind of evolved from CX to PX, and that's what's going to be shared from his perspective a lot today. Working with you this year, I've gained an entirely new perspective on PX. And I'm really looking forward to having you share some of that with our audience today. But before that, we'll start with a fun fact. You are a metal fan, and can you please tell us your top 3 desert island discs and some of your favorite musicians?
My top 3 artists?
Yes.
Yeah, I would say it varies over time. So what day is it? It's Tuesday. So I think it's Gojira, Opeth, and Megadeth this week.
Woo!
Yes.
All right.
Although I have a ZZ Top, but Cliff Burton would approve, if you know who that is. Yes.
Awesome. Well, if you want to talk to Tony more about metal later, you can do that in the breakout session. But let's get into the questions for today. We do want this session to be really interactive, and Tony definitely wants that. There is a Google form, QR code that you can scan to submit questions that we will check along the way. But if you want to just put your hand up at any time, more than happy to take your question on the spot. I'm going to start by asking you the same question that the previous panelists had. PX in the gaming industry isn't really a new thing, but there's many definitions and many interpretations of it. How do you define good PX, or what are the most important things you focus on when you think about PX?
Cool, so a big one. I think the first thing to understand about PX is that it's in the gaming industry, which unlike for many people, gaming industry evolved from software industry, so they treat it that way. On the other hand, it also has publisher and authors, so it evolved from the publishing industry of books. Remember the 80s, there was one coder who wrote it, sent it to a publisher, they would make money and make an abusive deal, like any imperialist, well, I'll stop there. But that's basically, but the gaming industry, I think we can agree, it's still very immature. So I've been in 3 companies, Riot, Epic, and Supercell. And first, a disclaimer, I'm going to give my opinions from my experience. It does not represent what Supercell thinks. Right now, my bosses probably have a hypertension episode because he says, is Tony speaking live? We're fucked. So those three companies are completely different. They do things opposite, and they're both successful. And when you see in any industry that two opposite things are successful, that means the industry is immature. There's no such thing as a best practice. There's good practices, there's bad, but not a best like this is the one, right? You'll see in banking, in construction, bricklaying. There's a book from 1867 or something like that by Taylor, who lays out the best practices of bricklaying, which are still used today, right? You won't see that in the gaming industry. So CX evolved from contact centers, but from the phone contact centers that evolved in the 50s from the switchboards. Since then, that were an offspring of the industrial era, very little has changed, and very little has needed to change. So it's not it's not something, oh, dirty, we'll leave it behind. It's an amazingly successful industry, but all our contact centers, our BPOs, evolved from that. The gaming industry has some nuances, and the worst thing is that a lot of that works, and it's also the best thing, because all you have to do is copy-paste the playbooks, you're 90% there. It's that 10% that we still haven't figured out, which is the big difference. So to figure out, you have to do experiments. We'll talk more about that in a minute. But experimentation is something which I've tried to do. Let's try this. Let's remove this role. And then when Tony recovers from the hypertension episode, he says, OK, let's try and remove it. And nothing happened. We go, see? That you can't do that in CX, right? Because it's the best practice. Here, no, let's look for emergent practices. So how do you call good PX practice? It depends because it's a mature market. If you ask Riot, if you ask Epic, if you ask Supercell, I can guarantee you three completely opposing answers, and three of them are correct. At some point, something better will emerge, but that means I'm going to cheat because I say I can't tell you the answer because it depends on too many things. Now, that's consultant talk for you, right? You'd have to hire me to go and fix it for you, which is what the consultant will say next. But it is true not to hire anyone, but you have to figure it out. And the first thing is to connect your PX teams to the business. What's the business trying to do? What Tony said at the beginning, a startup team is completely different skill sets and needs than a mature game or decaying game, where retention is more important than engagement. Bring everybody in, we don't care who they are. When they're going out, it says, we need to know who they are so we can go and get them back. It's other skill sets. So that means whoever's in charge here might not need to be in charge then, right? So maybe you can swap places. If you're a leader, let's swap places with someone else. And like I went from director Epic, I want to be the tools guy. I'll tell you more why about that, or you can ask me that later if you want to.
I also know that, take a page from Tony's book, he likes to break things if they're working. So he will like deploy and deploy until it breaks.
Yes, and that's how we became friends.
Awesome. So more and more we're seeing this product manager of PX evolve, come up in the gaming space, and you definitely see PX as a product. Can you elaborate a little bit more about that for us, and how is that set up differently from a traditional PX org?
Sure. So the reason it's called product manager is try to bring in some familiarity from product management into the PX ecosystem, considering that the parts can't be successful if the whole thing together is successful. So there's many approaches for this. A lot of them work. I'm trying 2 or 3 approaches, but you can try your own, which is to connect. You can connect systems together. One example of connectivity is you've got your self-help, like your player-facing knowledge base, right? And then when that fails, it opens a ticket, right? That's called a funnel. So what you can do is just try and get someone to pull the ticket, the article numbers that the player saw, and put them into your ticket. And the agent is going to see them. Oh, what are they meant to do with that? You don't know. Just put them there. The agents might figure it out. Maybe they won't. But some emergent practice can come from seeing if a player comes in and saying, you're thieves. And you go, what's he talking about? And you've seen they're looking at refunds. You know exactly what that ticket is about now. Just because you've this little crumb. It's not PII. It's just behavior pattern. That little thing is connected to tools that right now don't talk. So right now you can feedback, and you can go to those agents that are using that information. What articles do you think we need? I don't know which we need, but I know we have to remove these 3 pieces of shit that somebody published up there, right? So you have to get rid of those. So I digress. So let's go back to the ecosystem, right? Like product. So the whole of PX is a product, and because as soon as you don't consider it a product, you will boost the silos internally, and you will fragment the agent experience, you will fragment the player experience. There's a law that you can't escape, which is Conway's law. Who's heard of Conway's law? Conway's law, 1, 2 people. No? Can you shout Conway's law from there? Okay, good. So no, I'm not going to do your job, you do it. So Conway's law is that any software, so it refers to software, but bring it to business. Any software developed by a team will reflect the communication bridges and absence thereof of said team. Any software will reflect the communication of the team that built it. Now, you can just see it in, let's talk about a random piece of software like Microsoft, for example. Thank you, Microsoft, for hosting us, but I'll take a go at you. Go to Outlook. Anybody who uses Outlook here? Yeah, so you go in, you have an appointment, and you go to RSVP. If you click on it, there's a menu to respond, right? Which has a little button, red and blue and everything. And if you right-click on it, you get a contextual menu completely different. You have to go respond with comment, respond without comment, respond. It's a whole tree. This is done by different teams. The way to work around Conway's law, and this is the product approach, is to do a reverse Conway maneuver. Instead of fixing the software by going in and saying, these two menus have to look the same, you have the lead of those two teams have lunch on Thursdays together, right? This is in a book. It's called Team Topologies. Please get that book. Team Topologies talks about development teams, but it's applicable to any team. And I'm copy-pasting things directly from there. So this is how to manage Conway's law, team topologies. It changes how the team works depending on the time, the season, the challenge, everything. And the reverse Conway maneuver is to make some artificial communication that from the business perspective don't seem necessary, but from the product perspective, they're absolutely necessary, and you make them talk. Now, the reverse Conway maneuver, which is I'm doing, the double reverse Conway maneuver, yes, wait, bear with me for a minute. You're allowed to raise your hand and shout bullshit at any time. So the double reverse Conway maneuver is that you tweak the software to force two teams to talk to each other that won't talk because you no longer have the authority to do it as a director. I'm now just the tools guy. So what do? Okay, we're going to put this feature into the CRM, but it won't be available to the agents until they've taken the training. Which training? Good question. You figure it out. So it's hidden behind a training flag, right? And you connect that to the LMS. If you don't have one, well, it's connected to an LMS, dude. You need an LMS, maybe. Or maybe you're using a Google Drive. It can connect to this and see if the agent has taken the training, it shows you the feature. So everybody will go to the trainer and your vendor manager or your vendor support team. We need this feature, we need the training. And I said, but I don't have the content. They'll go to the content team and saying, where's the content for this? I don't know. Who's the process guy? This. We need a process so we can create the content, so we can create the training to unlock the feature. They're now talking in a room. And this has worked 3 times, so it's been evolving. That is what I'm trying to apply. I can't call it a raging success. I've said it's worked 3 times in a year. But it's to give you an idea how you take product and development managing technique from this, and you can apply it wherever you want. And that's what I'm trying to apply as a product manager in PX. I hope that sort of gives a guideline.
It does. And feel free to ask any questions along the way as well. And also have a debate with Tony. I think he's looking forward to that.
Yes. Yes.
So let's talk a little bit about your support setup, which is why I'm here. So Supercell has always been a strong proponent of keeping players in the game when they need support. How are you setting that up in order for players to get their problem solved as quickly as possible? What are your goals right now with setting that up?
Okay, so what works at Supercell is not what works at Epic, it's not what works at Riot, and it won't be what works for you. So I can tell you 2 things. The specific one for Supercell and the generic one, which are not the same. At Supercell, the support is inside the game. So if you download any game, click help and support. No, you click settings, help and support, and now you've entered, it looks like a different world. You'll see Conway's law in real time. So you'll see a HTML's knowledge base, and then you can open a ticket from there, right? It's inside the game. So anybody who directs your players to a website, right, like Epic, which has to be done because lots of those games are in a console. So figure out typing a ticket in a console, right? You have to use another option. Is to they're supported inside the game, and then they go back. The first thing is that the response time is measured in hours. So who's going to spend hours inside the app waiting for a response? Also, the first thing you do when you download a game is switch off notifications, right? If you want to keep a healthy life, you've definitely done that. So you won't know when the ticket's responded. So one thing we did is launch live chat. So live chat, you'll see something first. Something about data. When you look at CSAT as a predictor of retention, which it is, with our games, to a certain degree, I can give you some pointers there if you want. Just send questions, send curveballs. These are, we arranged these before, right? This is not an AMA. The AMA is if you start throwing those questions, right? And just do that. Yeah, good. Next ones. Let's skip these questions. I want those. So basically, CSAT is a predictor of retention. As your response time goes down from 10 hours, 8 hours, 4 hours, your CSAT goes up. But after, between 8 and 4 hours, it's a very small gain. And between 4 hours down, there's almost no CSAT gain. So what's the point of making it faster than 4 hours? Then you launch live chat, where the average ticket is resolved in 9 minutes with an escalation rate of 3% at Supercell. I think it was a 5% at Epic, and it was about 15% at Riot, right? And all those three numbers are very healthy, and there's no better than the other. You're resolving in 9 minutes, the CSAT is 20% higher. So you say, wait a minute, the graph goes down, then it stops going down, and suddenly it jumps like that? Yeah, because it's the instant gratification that the players like in the game. You're giving it to them in support. So, but building that is very difficult. You have to train your agents, and at Epic it was done with a skill-based model, right, which I can go into detail if you ask. At Supercell, we're not doing that. We're just making the tools just grind that and force that double reverse Conway maneuver to force the agents to learn how to chat live and stop using macros, right? Because a macro in chat, you're not doing that, are you? Of course not. Yes.
I find that whole thing fascinating. I'm going to ask a quickie. By the way, just a reminder, please use the QR code, which you should have in your bag, to ask a question. I'll get you to the official question in a second, but you did a lot of this stuff about automating, putting the support into the app. With Supercell, you've got a critical mass of audience. Is there a point where automating live chat, for example, is possible with a certain level of audience, but wouldn't be realistic for lower quantities of players? I mean, what's the threshold where that becomes sensible?
Automatic support?
Yeah, we're talking about live chat particularly, because you've got to have a fair amount of manpower to cover live chat, don't you?
Yeah. It's the headcount didn't go up with live chat, by the way. It's the same headcount. It's a little bit more productive because you've got the resolution right on time, and if you can get your concurrency to the magical number of 1.3, it's much cheaper than tickets. But that's from a cost perspective. Let's not think about that. The question was about automation. Chat itself, if you want live chat and you're going into bots again, you're probably increasing deflection, but you're probably also increasing friction. And that could also be churn. Deflection's good as long as the player goes back in the game. But if the deflection means the player's not coming back, or is just closing a ticket to open another one, it's fake deflection, right? And we've had situations where we had 30% deflection with automation. You switch it off, and the volume goes up 8%, because they were mostly reopens, right? And CSAT went up, and retention went up. Why? Because a lot of people were going into this chatbot and saying, I'm out of here. Because other games are more attractive than your chatbots. You just have to forget that. Playing another game, I have 6 games on my phone, right? If you're going to give me any type of trouble, deflection, anything, I'm going to play another game. I'm not going to stop waiting 4 hours for you. Even 9 minutes, you're pushing it.
You haven't been in a British Telecom broadband support chat box, surely?
Surely I have.
That's so much fun.
Jesus Christ. But that is CX, so that's what we're trying to leave behind, because you don't really have a choice if you have a monthly plan. If you're paying over Netflix, or you're paying for your phone, or if you're paying for your internet. The friction of leaving is high. The friction for leaving in the game is 3 seconds away, right? And if this player wants to give you $20 for gems or whatever, right? And you take 4 hours to get back to them, those $20 have gone to pizza, right? So good for them. The player's going to be happy. Don't worry about me. My experience is guaranteed. I've got $20. I'm omni-powerful, right? But you have to start saying, okay, how do we bring that in? So automation. It has to be, what we've tried to do is make it obvious that it's automation. For example, at Epic, we switched off all automation. What we did is add self-service in the articles, knowledge-based articles, add a button. how do you do the refunds? Click here to see your refunds. How to change your country? Click here to see to change your country. I can go into detail in that in a minute, but basically there's an automation bot which solves about half of our volume, right? But it's, for any tier 2 player, it's really easy to get out of it. But once you're in live chat, there's no automation. If you click on live chat, you're getting the agent as soon as possible. And our pickup time is 30 seconds. And when it's 42 seconds, I start getting a twitch and saying, OK, when it is 40 seconds, the chat goes off. And everybody says, why's chat off? Oh, you're taking more than 40 seconds. Because remember, I'm the tools guy. I don't talk to the agents. I just say, well, it switches off. You don't get live chat if you don't answer in 40 seconds. I go, but we need live chat. Well, just staff correctly. We'll work faster. Not my problem. Not my department.
So the official question is a bit of an off-kilter one, but I think given the kind of games that you're doing, hopefully you're going to. What stage do you, in the production process, are you thinking about implementing IAP monetization? But I think I'd like to, so monetization itself. Yep. I'd be interested in kind of how that affects your wider customer journey, customer lifecycle thinking as well. Does that make sense?
Can you repeat the question?
The specific question from Igor. Is Igor here?
Yes.
Igor there? Is asking, what stage of production do you start thinking about implementing IAP monetization? And I'm asking to just extend it a little bit, think about the customer journey as well, because I think when they're spending money versus when they're churning, when they're learning, all that kind of stuff.
So that's more a product question about building the game itself. I can't really tell you in detail how Supercell brings that in. All I can tell you is that it's depends. Supercell, it's in the name. Some games start off by delaying that. We'll figure out how to make money later, bring them the players, and then give them a good experience, and the money will flow in. Others start off with their monetization model before the game actually is finished to design. So, and there's a whole range in between. About the player journey, the more important monetization is, the more the can't play, can't pay tickets are in a priority. So you have to get to those players first. Obviously, for example, in a mature game, you can tier your players into tier 1 and 2. In an early game, everything is tier 6. Every little player is absolutely, please come here, we're waiting for you. What would you like to know? Can I play the game for you if you want, and just give you the score at the end. So that's basically it. But at Supercell, it varies a lot according to the game. At Epic, obviously, it's Tim Sweeney that decides this is what's going to happen, and we have to do it. So results may vary. I'm sorry, it's the...
No, that was his perfect answer. By the way, if you want to have a deeper conversation about monetization, let's grab some time in the next coffee break. But I'm going to hand back to Sam. I just want to make sure that we got the question out.
To round out that live chat topic, if you're thinking about it, it's the right time, because we're hearing this a lot from our customers right now because of the focus on retention and player loyalty. So definitely have a conversation with Tony if you're thinking about that. We're doing some
One thing about live
things.
chat, I helped launch live chat at Oracle, then at Riot, then at Epic, and now at Supercell. So live chat is something I'm really, really comfortable with launching. I'm happy to help anyone that reaches out, LinkedIn or here. At Oracle and Riot and Epic, there were very, very different experiences, very different purposes, and very different success criteria. So your results will definitely vary, right? But how to make it easy, I'm really happy to help. It's, as a player, I'll probably appreciate it because I might be playing some of your games, so yes, thanks.
Let's talk a little bit about your tools ecosystem. A lot of gaming companies are trying to figure this out. This is like the #1 problem I hear from my customers. So would love for you to share a little bit more about your tools ecosystem and what are you trying to do at Supercell right now that we've been working with you on this year?
I'll always try to shake the tools ecosystem in a very industrial to ecosystem way. The thing is this, our tools, just like our BPOs, just like most of our suppliers, just like most of the skills that you took from somewhere else, evolved in this industry that evolved in the 50s, right? And it's not a bad thing, because it works. As I said, you copy-paste the playbook, it's 90% done, and those tools are 90% there for you, right? So pretty much any tool you use will work in some way or another. So don't be afraid to say, let's use this tool. Why? It was the first ones that reached out, or it's the first ones that responded to the email. Is that it? Sure. How about an RFP? RFP, we don't have time for an RFP, right? We do that when legal comes in and says, you have to do an RFP. Fine, right? And then you copy-paste an RFP from the CX industry. They work well. So So the tools ecosystem is something that right now at Supercell we have a funnel, right? People that tap and help us support. Then there's self-service, bots, and then there's human, and there's escalations. And the ratio is about 6 to 2 to 1, right? So 50% bots, and about 3 times what is solved in bots and players by the self-service, right? Which is about 72%. It's a bit more than 2/3, right? So you need a knowledge base for the players to do that, and the knowledge base will never be better than its content. So if you're going to improve your knowledge base, just improve the content. I remember trying, there was a very shitty search software that used keywords to search. So you go in and it was if then else, right? Anybody that has ever programmed a VCR recorder can make a macro better than that algorithm for search internally. And it had a certain deflection rate. And we replaced that by an AI that would see if you opened a ticket or not, and then improve the recommendations for the type of player you were. After 6 months of trial, the improvement was not measurable because the content was the same. And the problem was not that the players weren't finding the content, they were finding it. So improving the finding of the content didn't do. So the player would go in, look for lag. There's probably a slang for lag in Portuguese. Probably the guys with the uniform, they're gone. But there's probably a slang, yeah? What? Latência. Latência. So you look for latência, and it's not lag, right? But the player will probably say, okay, roll eyes, lag. And they've done it. And you need an AI for that. So we had to switch it off, even though I think it would have worked in the end, but we didn't know how to make it work. But the content has to improve. The second part is the automation. Remember, deflection is a very dangerous measure because it's the player that solved their issue the fastest. It's also the player that gave up and left. It's also the player that went around and created until they found a human, right? Anybody who's navigated any automation knows that deflection is a very dangerous metric. Careful with driving it. That's the first capital sin of PX, driving metrics. In complexity, there's no non-linear relationship. If this goes up, this is good. No, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's good. It's like the car. What you want from the car? Speed, good. The faster, the better. No. How about engine size? The bigger, the better, right? Anybody who thinks about the environments will say, no, not necessarily. So what is it then, right? It depends. And that's with deflection. So back into the tools ecosystem, we've got different parts of support. Those are 6 key tools and another 10. So it's 16 roughly tools that interact with each other, which I'm trying to turn into a platform, meaning you can't tell when you're on one tool or the other, which is an ideal. It doesn't matter if I don't get there. It's just every day we do the next best thing to try and make these tools a little bit smoother, to fragment the play experience a bit less and the agent experience a bit less. And if that means I have to work on weekends, so be it. I don't care. But they have to get back in the game, right? And this is why I call it less strategically, because I'm more about the execution, because you already know how to think more strategically, right? Now, let's execute a couple of these things with that in mind.
Yes, Peter. Yes, let's take it.
I'm not sending my CV anywhere. Might be a mistake. And there's a thing about generations, right? I'm old school, and there's a lot of people here that already have a fresh mindset that please come and replace us as soon as possible because the industry needs it. So bring it. But AI, it's been around for a while. It's mostly machine learning, not AI. Right? It's not the AI that recognizes people in the airport when, it's the AI that just deflects faster, gets rid of players faster. If you're not chasing the right metrics, AI will only make it worse. We'll get rid of players faster, right? Also, AI, I would say you have to experiment. It is your duty to try it. It's a tool. It's like spreadsheets in the 80s. I remember that, by the way. Yeah, don't look at me like that. So I remember that, and everybody said, nah, we use the books is much better because pen, paper, the smell, the connection with they're all replaced by the spreadsheets. But the first spreadsheets were really, really a problem to use, and a lot of data was used due to misuse. AI is the same thing. It's a tool. I think the problem with AI is training. Who's going to train it? Your agents? Okay, they're going to be a little bit worse than your agents because as a photocopy, it's going to be a little bit worse, right? Oh, my best agents. Best at what? speed, accuracy. Training AI is a skill in itself that no one here has. Not even in Microsoft, in my opinion. Okay, I'm going to get booted out for that one. But nobody has that skill of training the AI, right? There's machine learning. Is this the correct tag, for example, compared to what? Who's going to train the AI how to tag? Is it going to be the developers? Just one tag, right? Bug report. Does your player know the difference between a bug and a feature they don't like? Who thinks they do? No, the player's got it. No one. How about your agents? Do your agents know the difference? No, right? How about you? Do you know the difference between a bug and a feature that the player doesn't like, or a feature that you don't like? So let's go to the developer, the one that actually coded the bug or the feature. Do they know the difference? Who thinks they do? Right, good. I know. But I'll take works on my machine. That's perfect. But, so if the developer, only one of you think they know what they're doing, and it was slightly sarcastic, which was very much appreciated, knows the difference between a bug and a feature, who's going to train the AI to tell you what the bug list is? Just tag it feedback, just do word clusters, and give the AI to the guy that was interested in going, or the girl that's interested in going there and taking a look, or read the fucking ticket. Just read it. Read 10. If you don't have if you have a weekend with nothing to do, read 500 of them. I've done that once, and it's insightful. And lots of you have talked about people in the company doing the tickets themselves and to take a look. All it does for you to see in 3 hours and 3 days, that's a lot more than I've managed to achieve at these companies. And I had Dan Vogel is the COO from Epic. You couldn't get him off the tickets. I don't know if you remember that he posted his Twitter account, his email, in Twitter, when it was Twitter. He said, if anybody has any problem with player support, contact me directly. We had 1 million tickets a month. How many emails did he get? Who guesses? Give me a guess how many emails he got in, I think it was 6 months where we evaluated. 10? 7. Who says more or less than 7? 2 emails in 6 months, right? He did get escalations, but when he put it on Twitter, he only got 2 emails in 6 months, right? So it's not really, that's his commitment to support, by the way. That was commendable. But this person knows exactly what's going on that player base. He doesn't need the AI or the data. So to answer your question, who's training your AI? I'm sure there's many success stories here, but repeating those successes, you'll have to do your research and do your experimentation. And do the experimentation, please. And don't do what people are telling you what to do. Just try it. Try it. If it breaks, switch it off, and then change it. And about the tool ecosystem, try it. If it doesn't work, switch it off. And yeah, at Epic, we migrated to CRM 3 times in 2 years. The agents were just rolling their eyes. Are we keeping this again? I don't know. Right? Depends on what happens. Yeah. What? Another one? Yeah.
Somebody say something? Was a comment?
Yes.
You know from RCP wants to know what's your favorite part of your job?
The favorite part of my job? Haha, good, look, okay. I'll tell you how I ended up as the tools guy. When I was at Epic, we had a tools team, and I said we need to hire someone who centralized the tools team, which was scattered. So the first thing, when as a lead, you fill in for the role, right? So I said, okay, I'm a little bit busy. I spent a lot of time leading that team. And when I finally hired the person, my heart went, oh, I was enjoying that. So I said, can I? I said, no, you hired me for this, so I'm going to do this job now. And I looked at it. So I looked around and said, can I do this elsewhere? So that's what I'm doing now, right? I really fell in love with the technology. And what I most enjoy is the double reverse Conway maneuver. And you all know it now. Get team topologies. Don't read it. Use it. Scan through it. Read 2 chapters at random. Just pick something up from there. It's more than enough. Yeah.
All right, last couple of questions. In the gaming industry, where technology is constantly evolving and no one really knows what tomorrow of gaming looks like, how do you adapt and iterate as you continue to see these changes?
Okay, you won't like the answer, but I'll give it anyway. If something you think is giving you a problem, switch it off and see what happens. Literally. As I said, we're setting technology that you weren't certain. Switch it off and see what happens, right? don't go off and switch support off right yet if you want to keep your jobs. It's not that radical. But switch off an automation in your smallest language. Yes? Get an agent and don't let him access Google Drive to access their macros and sit over and watch them and say, now you have to type your answers. See what happens. Does their CPH or productivity really go down? We've tried that, and the CPH didn't go down at all. It went down a little bit. For some people, it crashed. For some people, it went up. Overall, it didn't go down. So how to make those decisions and adapt? Switch off, change, migrate, launch, unlaunch, right? Don't be scared to mess up, right? I know I've messed up big time. You don't remember those. Of course you do. Damn it. Anyhow, you'll be remembered by those mistakes, but you will suddenly hit the jackpot. Remember, we're in a mature industry where we're in the bricklaying before 1860, right? Where using two hands was not done yet, right? It was done with one hand. Now it just pick up the. Well, I won't tell you about bricklaying techniques. If you're interested in bricklaying techniques, contact me later. I can tell you about the compressive strength of concrete in real time.
There's a question from the audience. What is the solution for time zones with live chat? Are there agents around the world? And if no one is available, isn't that more frustrating for the players when no agent is available to answer them?
Absolutely. So the first thing is have live chat self-protect, switch off when they're not available, and says, please leave us a message. So if you go to the Epic page, epicgames.com, log in with your account, click on any article, contact us, you'll see two buttons, live chat, non-live chat, and one actually switches off in real time with about a 10-second difference, and the other was that you just leaves it on. So don't offer live chat if you don't have agents for it. Make sure, in live chat there's certain rules. Make sure chat is not offered when you don't have agents available. Detect that automatically, or have somebody, if it has to be you, to go in and says last agent goes off, click switch. Switch it on, you switch it off. Switch it on, too much comes in, switch off. Switch off when there's nobody available, and it switches off when the wait time is too long. As soon as it exceeded 40 seconds, and I got so much heat for that, I had to increase it to a minute, but it switches off. And it says, no, there's no live chat. What are you talking about, right? And tell the players, there's nobody available, we'll get back to you. That's the first thing, those two rules. Third, protect the agent. In an asynchronous ticket, if you leave a whole opportunity for a player to leave a family history, your family history in it, right? Like saying, there was from a Monty Python scene, your mother was a hamster and your father smelt of elderberries. I don't know if you know that reference. Look it up. Good. So your agent can just ignore it for now, transfer it to someone else because they sent it to the company to support@yourgame.com, right? But if it's live chat, they're saying it in your face in real time. Give the agent a ban button, or give them the right to, if it's offensive, just close it in the player's face. Don't make the agents put up with that. They're not trust and safety. They're not prepared for that. Don't expect them to be prepared. They shut it down, leave it, and then have a QA go in and says, yeah, asshole, whoa, wait a minute. Oh, this appealed to my inner self. And I just, dude, okay, you have to be a little bit, this was the line. Where's the line? Figure it out. Let the agents figure it out. They want to give support. It's amazing because they get great CSAT in live chat. So they're not going to abuse that necessarily. If they abuse it, out of 40 agents, you'll get one boy or girl doing it in 6 months, right? It might happen. So give them the capacity to, without over-constraining it, to them, if this player is being abusive to you, just get rid of them. Those are the rules. Switch it off when you can't handle it. Protect the agent. And live chat will thrive by itself. The last thing about live chat is set up your ecosystem, your support ecosystem, to resolve 80% of issues in 15 minutes. That's what allowed a group of 2,000 agents to switch on live chat and get 86% CSAT in the first month. It's that your agents can solve 80% of any issue in 15 minutes. And that 20% can get escalated to someone that can take a few hours, right? That means you're getting your player back in the game in a matter of minutes. So I over-answered that a little bit, but how do you keep it live doing all the time zones? Just do your best coverage possible. You'll have to push your agents sometimes to say, okay, for example, there's teams that have 40% more volume at weekends, but you have 30% fewer agents. You have some scheduling pressure to apply there, saying we have to follow, because remember you were talking about, let's go where the play is in social media. Let's go and find them in their channels. You have to go and find them in their Sundays too. If they're playing Saturday night, but you can't be bothered to put the agents there, you have some homework to do, right? Of how to negotiate that with your teams, with your vendors, with your management, or just double Whereas Conway maneuver. make that CSAT appear in an email saying, report of CSAT for Saturday nights. And somebody will start twitching at some point saying, maybe we need more coverage Saturday nights? Yes. Yes, you do.
Was there a question? Bad live chat. Sorry.
Yeah. 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 I feel you. I'll paraphrase that for the recording. Live chat is shit and can be a road to hell. If you don't get fast responses, because the point of live chat, 3-hour responsives, is not longer live chat. That team is probably driving deflection as a positive thing. So when you gave up on that, somebody got a bonus saying, well deflected, boy, or girl, or person. So it's they're driving deflection. They're driving cost per ticket. And that's the CX. That's a CX thing. And for an airline, you already bought the ticket. You're going to find something. It's your urgency. I can afford to wait because I'm making your ticket instead of 300 euros, 170. Sorry, you have to wait now, right? So I'm not saying it's a bad experience, but it might be a good business decision. Maybe not. I can't speak on behalf of an airline. All I can say that if you have 6 airlines and 6 gates saying, please take ours, you go up and saying, do you include coffee on board? You have to wait 3 hours. I'm taking the other next plane, right? Because that's how video games operate. So we can't afford that. Ryanair can, right? I like Ryanair, by the way. I like the airline. That's how I got here. No, that's not how I got here. But that's how I traveled last week. I like it all the same, but forget about reaching out. They're not there for you. Why? Because you saved $80. If you pay me $80, I'll respond in less than 3 hours. Nah, I'll wait. Nah, not me, right? But in your case, you probably would have paid $80 to get that response at that time, right? That conversation, you can afford it in the airline industry. You can't afford it when you're in the mobile app. No. 3 hours? 3 hours. A game takes 15 minutes and they're complaining it takes too long? And you're going to make them wait 15 minutes for responding a chat? So, yeah. So my opinion is, as leaders of player experience, don't. Right? Yeah. So make switches off and says, leave a message, we'll get back to you. Publish your average response time. Our website used to publish, get the average response time, multiplied it by 1.4. Remember, we're CX practices to reduce low expectations. We did copy that, and that actually works. And publish it to the player. And sometimes they would switch language, and the waiting time would say, oh, it's 40 hours for English. Oh, okay, I speak. Eu falo português. Eu mudar de idioma. You go down, haha, 2 hours. Detengo. That was Spanish, actually.
Yes, question. Wow, your questions are starting to come in. Tools. Wish list for your tools.
Oh, wish list for the tools? Yes. Oh, I don't. I stopped making wishes when I stopped believing in Christmas when I was about 12. So my wish list is pretty much my work list. Is what I need to do more than what I wish the industry provided. But what I would like is a more sincere approach to what the limitations of the apps, and everybody come in and saying, I'm selling you this, but it can't do this. Can you help me work it together? Oh, right. I'm talking to a human, not to a machine, not to be a B2B interaction. This is more someone obsessed with trying to fix a real problem, saying, I'm trying to fix this. Let's sit together and do this. And the best experience I've ever had is when somebody sends over a technician and sits next to you, and they both of us have the same player, right? Because this is one problem with it. You're the client, right? and you have reports and you have an agent and they have a player. And that disconnect becomes fatal for the player. When two people have the same player, now we go in and this says, and you read the ticket. Reading tickets becomes fascinating when you care about the player. You go in and you read it and you go, how did it come to this? So my wish list is more about the skill set in the industry and the alignment in the industry than a feature of a tool, because features you can build them, and whatever you build, if you were to build the perfect software for me today, it might not work anymore as of Saturday. And we'll have to change it again, right? So my guess is just give me something that might work, and let's try it. And don't get offended if I replace it later.
Last question here. How much pushback do you get on stuff like the double reverse conway maneuver? Any stories of getting in trouble from your decisions?
I've never got into trouble. I don't know what you're talking about. Yeah, okay. So you do get... Obviously, I'm going to give you such an obvious answer that you're going to roll your eyes with. If you do it correctly, you don't get the pushback, which is a circular definition and absolutely useless advice I can give you. It's just, you have to keep trying to do it, and the pushback, you just apologize and take it back. When somebody comes in and says, I'm not going to wait for a training flag, switch it on. You go, fine. Switch it on. Because you can't put all your eggs in the same basket. That one feature is not defining your contribution to the organization. It's one of 60 things you're going to do this year. So lose 8 battles to win 1, right? It's not a game. You're not playing for ELO, right? For rating, right? You just lose battles if you're getting too much pushback. You can get into trouble, but if you yield enough, he said, well, he yielded 8 times, let him get away with 1. And I go, yes, and make that one count, right? So that's my political advice from someone expert in corporate politics, aren't I, Tony?
All right, we are at time. That went by really fast. Thank you so much,
Thank
Tony.
you. Thank you,
to
everyone.
the audience as well.
Do you mind if I take a selfie with you? Yeah.